Hi guys, it's Will here and welcome to the Upgraded Ape Show. On this show we've got Helen Irlen of the Irlen Institute. This is a redo and a retake of a podcast we did a little while ago for the Upgraded Ape podcast before we rebranded and changed how we were doing things. I've decided to re-upload this show as part of the Upgraded Ape Show series of interviews purely because it was absolutely fascinating and I learnt a lot, and I know I've had a lot of people from the audience get in contact with me and say that it's been, life-changing for them. The question I posed to you before we dive into the interview is, have you ever suffered from ADD, ADHD or dyslexia-like symptoms? Do you struggle to sit and read a book, or do you struggle to use a computer for long periods of time? If you do suffer from any of those issues, which will affect you getting stuff done, you may be suffering from Irlen syndrome. Light sensitivity, which is what Irlen syndrome is, affects 46% of people who have issues in reading or dyslexia. Also, 50% of those people with autism and Asperger syndrome, and 70 to 80% of people who have had a brain injury or traumatic thump to the head essentially can suffer from Irlen syndrome as well. So this could be a really important show to listen to if any of those apply to you. Just a quick reminder as well, because I've got it sat in front of me and we're nearly sold out of them. We have the Get More Done 60-day planner, and you can get it on upgradedape.com if you go to the shop section on there. It's basically a to-do system that I put together for myself, which people have asked for, and so I've made it available to everyone else. It's a big old thick book, and you basically put down your 60-day goals, your goals for today, some daily tasks such as meditation, getting fresh air and visualizing your 60-day goals, along with loads of other stuff like you have a daily quote. And basically the point is that you write down your goals at the beginning of the day and you focus on those goals. We've all been there where you faff around for a whole day, you think you got loads done, but you actually look back and it's all urgent but non-important tasks. The whole point of the Get More Done 60-day planner is that within 60 days, you choose 4 goals that you'll be made up with if you hit them in 60 days, and then you focus your time and energy on achieving those goals, so that every 60 days you come up with another 4 goals, and by the end of the year, you'll have achieved more than anyone else you know, I bet. I guarantee it. So that's the 60-day planner, and you can find it on upgradedape.com. Now, let's dive into our interview with Helen Irlen. Hi guys, it's Will here, and welcome to the Upgraded Ape Show. Upgrade your brain, get more done, kick life's ass. Hi Helen, thanks for coming on the Upgraded Ape podcast. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's great to be talking with you, Will, and I really like your website, what you're doing, and I love the concept of turbocharging your brain.
Excellent. Well, let's dive straight into it. And can you tell us a little bit about what Irlen syndrome is exactly?
It's about the fact that I should talk about Irlen syndrome and just say we're working with improving people's brains so that they can function stress-free, which improves their learning, their attention, their performance, and equally as important, their health and their well-being. And we're doing it by some very non-evasive methods of finding out which people are stressed by certain environmental conditions. And that's interesting because most people don't view their environment as particularly stressful. But for those who have Irlen syndrome, lighting is a major stress, whether it's sunlight or fluorescent lights or bright lights or glare or headlights at night. Even reading, doing visually intensive activities, writing and copying, computer screens because you're staring into a fluorescent light, and now iPads and iPhones, they're all way too bright and are very stressful for your brain and affect your performance and also your health and well-being.
Well, I think most people have experienced sat in front of a laptop or their computer for a long period of time and getting eye strain, and I think a lot of people as well, this is something I want to ask you a bit later, of how many people actually notice the effects versus just put up with it. Can we dive into about how and why you can get eye strain and these stresses from things like fluorescent lighting and computer screens?
You want the technical concept here.
Go crazy technical with us.
Let me go a little technical. Most people who are bothered by sunlight are aware that they're bothered by sunlight, and that's especially true in Southern California. Probably in the UK, glare would be as an equal problem to sunlight. And they protect themselves with sunglasses. Here they wear sunglasses and hats with brims because it's acceptable. And they're not even aware because they never let themselves get long enough to get an array of physical symptoms. But what people are not aware of is that the brain processes lighting, whether it's sunlight or fluorescent lights or bright lights or glare, in exactly the same way, triggering the same array of physical symptoms. And we're just not aware of it. If your eyes are opened, your brain is being flooded by light and visual information. And it's not your eye, but your brain that has to process that visual information. Your eye is basically a camera that kind of places the visual information on the right part of the retina so it can go to the brain to get processed. That's why you have a visual cortex. It's the largest part of one's brain. And if you look at light and take light and you put it through a prism, it breaks out into all the colors of the rainbow, traveling at different speeds. And they all have to be coordinated and processed by the brain. For those people who are being stressed by lighting and visually intensive activities, what's happening is certain of those colors or wavelengths of light, the timing is off. And so it's almost to the brain, it's like static on a radio, and the brain is stressing and working way too hard to try to process it, and it triggers an array of physical symptoms way beyond just eye pain or strain. And then it creates also what I call visual distortions, which are like optical illusions.
What physical symptoms would we be looking at exactly?
All right. Well, let's do eye pain, strain, hurt, ache, burn, sandy, scratchy, itchy, headaches, migraines, nauseous, dizziness, stomach aches for some people. I even get comments like, I get foggy-headed, I can't concentrate, I'm constantly blinking or squinting or opening my eyes wide trying to see things.
Well, I know that I've experienced, and it's something I'm actually changing on the Upgraded Ape website at the moment. Most of the pages are white background with black text. And it's fine if I'm working on there for 10, 15 minutes, but when I'm doing the longer essays, after about half an hour, I get terrible eye strain myself. But I notice if I put a grey background, it just slightly off-white, all those issues disappear instantly. Is that down to light stress, essentially, coming from the fluorescent screens?
You're absolutely on the continuum. You're not as severe as the people who immediately, within a line, a word, a line, a page, a few pages, start to experience physical symptoms. But you're definitely on the continuum. And it's interesting because you always assume that your experience is the same for everybody. So it's like, sure, doesn't everyone get some type of strain or fatigue and need to take breaks after being on the computer or reading for a short while? And the point of fact is no. There are people who can go for hours on end with reading. They'll read as long as they need to without stopping. Being on the computer as long as they need to without stopping. Wouldn't it be nice if you can't do that to be able to do that pain-free? I always find it interesting when people say to me, but doesn't everyone get tired or sleepy from reading? Isn't that what reading's supposed to be like? Isn't it supposed to put you to sleep? And I go, no. For the majority of the population, that's not true. Or for those people who get headaches after they've been reading or doing any visually intensive activity or being on the computer, they always comment to me, oh, but everyone gets headaches. They just have to do it long enough. And that's not true because, again, the majority of the population does not get headaches at all.
Okay, how many people generally within the population would have major effects from this down to the minor effects?
On a continuum, we're seeing about 26% of the population being light sensitive and being affected. In a moderate to severe range, it's about 11 to 12%. Those statistics change when you're looking at children in school because, remember, they're constantly reading black on white, high gloss, under fluorescent lights, looking at things on whiteboards and computer screens. So they're being stressed all the time. And when we're looking at children who may be misdiagnosed with ADD, ADHD, or dyslexia, over a third of them are being misdiagnosed, and what they actually have is the type of problem that now is called Irlen syndrome, which is what we're talking about. It's just simpler to say light sensitivity. For those children who are struggling with reading, it's about 46% who have Irlen syndrome. For those who have learning disabilities with severe reading problems or reading difficulties, about 46% have Irlen syndrome. When you're looking at even populations of those who are on the autistic continuum, we're seeing a very high percent who find that they experience distortions in their environment and that they do see less distortions and it's easier to function in very dim lighting. And we're also now working with those who have experienced head injuries, concussions, whiplash. And although the authorities say it should go away as long as you rest after a couple of weeks, there is a large population where those symptoms never go away. So we have to do a lot of educating to get people to realize that what they experience may not be normal, and that as they keep doing it, they're not functioning or performing as well as they could. They're putting so much more effort into it. And the end product is that it affects the immune system, and that affects their health and well-being.
And how does this light sensitivity come about in the first place? Is it somewhat genetic? Does it get worse over time if not dealt with? And can it be reversed? Or is it just, can you just take steps to reduce the effects on it? Or does it come from an injury on most occasions?
Yes and yes. Well, you can inherit the problem. So I always laugh and say, well, if you end up having this kind of light sensitivity that we call Irlen syndrome, you should wear, and you're dating, you should wear a T-shirt that says, I have light sensitivity, do you? Because then the likelihood is if you marry someone who's equally as severe, that your children are going to be very severe. So yes, you can inherit it. And therefore, either one parent or both parents can have this kind of problem. So it's always nice to look at hereditary issues. In addition, you can acquire the same type of difficulties through head injuries, concussions, whiplash. Certain medications can make you more light sensitive, and certain autoimmune diseases along with it have this type of light sensitivity. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can be experiencing this problem.
Okay. I know, and it seems to be quite common knowledge that fluorescent lights seem to cause a lot of headaches and different issues. Is there any specific reason why fluorescent lights versus the likes of LEDs or incandescent lights are particularly bad?
Well, your incandescent lights actually duplicate the same curve as natural sunlight. Fluorescent lights have a flicker effect to them, and the brightness of fluorescent lights have increased over 100 to 150% since World War II, under the misassumption that brighter is better. We keep making everything brighter and brighter and brighter. So it's the brightness effect and also the flicker effect that creates a problem in terms of fluorescent lights.
Yeah, I mean, something I've never really thought about, but kind of makes sense from what you just said, is I've got a family member who has been complaining about a new laptop, giving him eye strain, and he's been complaining about it for weeks and weeks now, and we've tried everything, but the laptop they had before that was pretty ancient. So it could just be something as simple as the screen being twice as bright as what it was previously, I assume.
Right, and it's hard. A lot of people complain about television sets as well, because even your TV sets have gotten brighter and brighter, and the high-definition TV sets are brighter than they used to be with the old TV screens. So what we're doing in terms of our environment is, for the majority of the population, the things that we're talking about today are not environmental stressors, so they don't recognize the fact that they're disabling and creating stress for the rest of the population who is not like them. We did position papers for the European community, Canada, and the U.S., and so did other groups, such as those who work with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and a bunch of other groups, where all of these populations are affected by fluorescent lighting. So we try to stop the ban on incandescent lighting, but it wasn't recognized because the majority of the population is not affected.
It seems silly to me that And again, just thinking about it now, if I picture in my mind ridiculously bright fluorescent lights, it is in schools and in hospitals, which are obviously they're the two worst places for it. Just on that point then, do you know why we've moved to fluorescent lights in general? Are they more power efficient, or is there some reason for it? Is there some benefit for it that obviously may go to outweigh one way or the other the issues with them?
I think it was because it was cheaper they went to fluorescent lighting, but those who are involved scientifically in studying lighting are admitting now that they got it all wrong with fluorescent lighting, and all the money for research is going into LED lighting.
And do you have any studies or any results on LED lighting versus fluorescent and incandescent?
I don't, because the schools have not switched over yet. All the schools in the U.S., I would assume it's the same in the U.K., are still using fluorescent lights because the LED lighting is so much more expensive.
Sure. Okay.
And I'll talk in terms of the U.S. Some of the cars have LED headlights, and they're changing over a lot of the street lights and the traffic lights to LED lights, and my clients are complaining that they're too bright.
The next thing I was going to ask you was, can you give us a bit of an example of a success story that you've had with one of your clients?
One or millions of them.
Or perhaps one standout example.
I have so many that stand out, and it's interesting because we have a Facebook page, and the parents love to post pictures of their children and report how their grades have gone from D's to A's and how they love reading now, and then the adults post pictures of themselves and say the difference in terms of how they feel, their depth perception, driving is easier for them. Let me say, do you want a child or an adult, Will? Which would you rather have?
It'd be able to relate to more of an adult, I imagine. If we can use an adult example, please.
Use some adults examples? Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a couple of different ones. I had someone come in. He was a piano tuner, and I said, well, is that what you've done? And he said, no, I was a very talented musician, and I tried to go out on tour with Peter, Paul, and Mary, but I couldn't sight read the music. And when we found the correct colored overlay for him and put it down on the music, he just looked at me and said, you mean the notes aren't supposed to be moving in time to the music? And here he had given up a whole career because he didn't know he had this. I've had I've had some really serious examples. I've had adults, we've worked a lot with people now coming to us who professional NFL football players, professional ice hockey players who've experienced concussions or TBIs and are out for the count in the sense that they can't perform anymore, and it's affected their ability to even think, concentrate. They're getting headaches or constantly, and then with the Irlen filters, that all goes away and disappears, and they can go back to doing what they were doing before. I always have to think of the ones that have just been here because we've seen millions over the last 30 years. Oh, I know. I have a funny one. I had a student come to me who was getting C's and D's in high school, and then she got her Irlen spectral filters and started getting A's in college. And she talked to her brother, who was in law school, and said, you need to go and see to the Irlen Institute. And he said, no, I'm the bright one. You were the one who struggled in school. I never struggled in school. Well, he finished law school, but to practice law, you have to pass the bar exam. And he took the bar once and failed. He took the bar twice and failed. And all of a sudden, here he comes to the Irlen Institute, Dad on one side and his sister on the other side. And when I asked him what reading was like for him, because he has to do voluminous reading for law school, he said, well, I get really tired after I've been reading a page or two and I start drinking coffee, and then I drink coffee nonstop, and after 5 minutes I actually have to hold my eyelids open, otherwise they would close. Those are pretty dramatic stories.
For sure. Is there any easy ways to test to see if you are light sensitive? And from that, the next question is going to be, how can we optimize our environment? You mentioned the overlays, but is there anything else we can do day to day to try and prevent any of the issues that you've mentioned?
First of all, it is sometimes easy to create an awareness if you're bothered by sunlight or glare. Pay attention to what happens when you're reading on the computer. You should be able to do that easily and comfortably for hours. Nothing should happen to the page. Nothing should change, and it should stay totally comfortable. If that's not true, you can get onto my website, which is Irlen, IRLEN.com, and we have some buttons on the top, and you can change the background color on the computer screen and try reading some of our information in different colored backgrounds. If you have this problem, you'll find that some of the colors can actually be as bad or even worse than the white background. Some will be better, but one will feel the most comfortable, and things will be the clearest and even the most stable. Some people aren't aware that things move in their environment or move on the page, or that things are flickering or flashing at them while they're trying to read or do other visually intensive activities. And you wouldn't know that happens unless you can calm it down and compare. So one thing I would suggest is just trying to change the background color. 2, we have different quick self-tests available for people who are struggling with reading. You may have good reading skills, but still struggling with reading in the sense that it takes you longer to do it, that you have to take more breaks, that comprehension, you have to do a lot of rereading for comprehension. We have other self-tests for people who are getting headaches and migraines and want to know if this is one of their triggers or their main trigger for their headaches and migraines, and whether they can get rid of their headaches and migraines. So we have various self-tests available. If you have this problem, there is a non-invasive, highly effective method for getting rid of it, which I actually created 30-plus years ago and have been used by millions and millions of people all around the world. But we have colored overlays, which you can place on your computer screen or on books to use to read. But because the environment, if you're severe, any lighting is going to be creating stress for you, we created what's called Irlen spectral filters, which are just colors specifically designed for your brain. So we figure out which of those colors or wavelengths of light your brain is having difficulty processing accurately, and filter only those. And for each one we need to filter, we need to determine how much we need to filter it. And once we've done that, it calms the brain down. It doesn't matter what environment you're in or what you're doing. It totally keeps you stress-free and pain-free. And you can wear them as either glasses or contact lenses. Talk about changing your environment. If you're a child, you do not have the option to change your environment because the classroom environment is bright fluorescent lights and white books. So that's really difficult to do. As an adult, you may be able to control your environment. It depends on your workplace and whether they let you do that. So some of my suggestions are, if possible and you're in a room that has natural lighting, turn off the fluorescent lights. Do not think that brighter is better. You may find that dimmer is better. Although there's some people that we work with that need actually more lighting. In general, most of the people who we work with need less lighting, and that's okay. And not to feel funny about modifying your lighting. If you're going out somewhere, take control of your environment and sit with your back to the window. Don't sit and stare at the window because that's going to be too bright and too stressful for you. Those are some of the quick suggestions. Use colored paper whenever you can. Find out the color that works for you. In school, we suggest that the children do not sit directly under fluorescent lights. If they can do it, they should wear hats. But if you wear a hat, make sure that the underbrim of the hat is black or dark brown. If it's white or bright colors, it's just going to take the light and reflect it and intensify it right back into your eyes. Oh, I had a new one for me because I just got a car and I changed from gray to a white car, and I sat in the car thinking, I bet people who have Irlen or have light sensitivity should not have white cars because it takes the light and reflects it back at them, just like snow would.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you mean on the bonnet as you're looking forward?
Exactly. Yeah. They're better
Excellent.
with darker colors that absorb the light.
There's some really, really excellent practical ideas for both looking into it and doing some self-experimentation, I guess, which I'm a massive fan of. And if people do find that they do suffer from any of these issues, you've given them a couple of tips there to try and address them. So, Helen, where can we find out more about both yourself and the Irlen clinics and everything else that goes along with it?
Yes, well, we have Irlen clinics throughout the UK as well as throughout the world, and you can find out where they are by looking at my website, which is irlen.com, and there's tons of information as well as self-tests on that website. We also have an Irlen Institute Facebook where you can get on board, and it's like a community for all those people who are suffering and struggling, and they'll kind of give you an idea of what's happening and how much Irlen has helped them. And I've written 2 books on the subject if you enjoy reading, and one is called Reading by the Colors, and the other is called The Irlen Revolution, How to Change Your Brain and Change your perception and change your life.
Excellent. There's a lot of food for thought there, Helen, and thanks again.
Thank you, Will. Pleasure talking with you.